All right, let's get right into our next interview, which is with Jesse from Coinbase or Base. I want to talk about all the things that have been happening in this world, and especially as we think about scalability, there's a lot more going on for all of you to know about, and we're going to cover all those things. And without further ado, please welcome Jesse on stage. We got no good. That was my water. Right. Welcome, Jesse.
Kartik?
We'll get this on in a
Hello,
second.
hello.
There we go.
Hey Kartik, how's it going?
It's
Happy
going
Friday.
great. It's Thursday. You actually almost had me. It's been a long week. Well, I want to start off by kind of just understanding some of the context around how did Base actually happen? What was the inside story here? How did you get Coinbase on board, or who got who on board, and how did this come to be?
Hey everyone, happy Thursday. I'm Jesse. I have been in the Coinbase orbit for 6.5 years now. So I joined as through an acquisition of a company I started, and then I led all of our consumer-facing businesses on the engineering side for 4.5 years. So Coinbase, Coinbase Pro, Coinbase Wallet, and then starting late 2021, I stepped into a new role, and the role was figure out how to bring Coinbase on chain. If you look at Coinbase's business historically, it's mostly off-chain, centralized exchange, brokerage, but we started building new products like USDC, like CB Wallet, and there was a lot of appetite to say, okay, like how do we transition everything over the next decade? And so that started what was a long journey to Base, a lot of trying and failing. We spent about a year just like trying products to see if those would be a catalyst to bring Coinbase on chain. We kind of got stuck at every point. A lot of the time we got stuck on like, where do we put this and how do we make it actually work at Coinbase scale? After a bunch of trying and failing there, they actually shut down my team. They were like, it's enough failing. Go find something else to do. And so that was kind of the late summer of last year. And then kind of out of the ashes of them shutting down the team, me and one of the other people were like, maybe we should just launch a test net of a chain, because that's been this thing that's just been like blocking us again and again. And so we launched that internally. People started using it. And then we were like, maybe we should give this one more shot. So we made the pitch. People were begrudgingly said yes, go do that. And then we've kind of been off to the races. And I don't think anyone really thought it was going to be, people didn't really know what to make of it until we launched the test net. And then we launched the test net, and I think that kind of connected. Like people said, it was like, oh, like this is kind of the platform for the future of the business. This is where we're going to bring the next million developers, the next billion users on chain.
I don't think anybody knew that story. This is awesome. Well, that's a big mandate. So we're going to go into how you execute on that. But maybe before we get started, like what's the separation here between Coinbase and Base in terms of kind of how you think about what to do or what not to do?
Yeah, absolutely. So Base is being incubated inside of Coinbase. It's similar to the way other chains have been incubated inside of labs companies. OP Labs incubating Optimism, Offchain Labs incubating Arbitrum One and Nova. So we're incubating Base inside of Coinbase. That operates as basically a startup inside of Coinbase. I'm kind of created it, leading it day to day. A still really small, scrappy team. So we're just heads down building, but we're given a ton of autonomy, kind of to figure out what does it actually look like to build a decentralized network out of a centralized public company. That's the kind of like face of crypto for much of the world, and there's no prescribed path. There's no answer.
There can't be. You're going to be the one to figure it out for others to copy.
We're figuring it out. So it's definitely a journey, but I feel super grateful to have, I think having Brian Armstrong, our CEO, who's such a visionary. In 2016, he wrote this thing called the Coinbase Secret Master Plan, where he was like, there's going to be 4 phases. And the 4th phase is we're going to bring 1 billion users into the crypto economy to use millions of dApps. And I think that like founder CEO energy who gets it and gets crypto and gets the vision
Wants it to happen.
and wants it to happen. That's kind of what uniquely enables us to exist, and uniquely it has enabled us to experiment for 2 years to figure out what's the path. And I think now we're on a path that feels like it really can make it happen. And he's still, just there supporting, believing, and helping us make it happen.
Amazing. So you've been experimenting for a lot of this on-chain stuff for a couple of years. You tried it out with the testnet. What made you kind of pick the OP stack, and kind of what were things that you were considering in terms of kind of trade-offs, and sort of how did you land on OP stack?
Yeah, we so in the beginning of 2022, as we were kind of iterating through those products, we realized that we needed to decide how we were going to build kind of holistically for the business. Like there wasn't clarity of like, okay, do we build on EVM or Rust or Cosmos SDK app chains? So the first decision we made kind of in the first half of 2022 for all of Coinbase was EVM and Ethereum, because that's where we saw the most organic activity happening internally. It's where we saw the most adoption externally, TVL, developers, etc. And at that point, we kind of identified, okay, it's going to be EVM, it's going to be Ethereum, but it's got to be layer 2 too, because you can't do anything at Coinbase scale on layer 1. It's just too expensive. And so that was first half of 2022. At that point, we started working on just scaling Ethereum, period. We were joined up with Optimism on 4844 or proto dank sharding. We've been now working on that, contributing core engineering resources with other Ethereum core contributors, and that's going to scale rollups by 5 to 10x lower costs. And then we spent the second half of that year basically going out and talking to everyone and just trying to build a mental model for how is this architecture going to shape up? Like, what's it actually going to look like 2 to 3 years from now, 5 years from now? And how do we want to fit into it? And I think as we went through that process, we kind of landed on a few things. One is that we convinced ourselves that whereas we kind of started thinking that there was going to be just one massive L2, we kind of ended thinking, oh no, actually there's going to be many of these things. And so what's going to be really important is having interoperability between them, and having kind of an open standard that enables them to scale together in like a mesh. We now call that thing superchain, but when we first started thinking about it, it was like the mesh of layer 2s that are going to scale layer 1. And then I think on the technology side, I think we were just really impressed with the OP stack. We started working with the Bedrock version, which wasn't the one running on Optimism.
It was like V0, and you were really in the
we were like in it. But I think we started getting in there, and we said, "Whoa! Like this is not just an optimistic rollup. It's really it's a foundation that can support an optimistic prover, but can also support a ZK prover, as we're seeing with some of the new developments that are happening just in the last few weeks." It's built in a really thoughtful way. There's a really strong engineering team behind it, and it's open source, and it's fully free and MIT licensed, and that meant that we could just start
experimenting.
We just started experimenting, and like our lawyers were like, "Great, that's awesome. Don't worry about it."
You don't hear that sentence often.
Right, exactly. It was rare. It was pretty cool. Like we literally launched a testnet, I think in like a week, internally on the OP stack on Bedrock. And so it was kind of that combination of the technology plus the open source nature of it. And then as we started getting more serious, the two other factors I think really played into it was, when you think about Coinbase, we are like, obviously an important brand in crypto, but we're also a centralized business, public company. And I think one of the things that was really appealing to us about the OP stack was it gave us the opportunity to work with Optimism Collective, who's kind of at the other end of the spectrum. Like they are pushing the limits of decentralization, of decentralized governance. And it felt like bringing those two strengths together of like the centralized public company and the decentralized like leader of governance was just a really powerful combination, and that there was like really nice kind of strength, weakness fit there. And then the other, I think, big contributing factor was we'd been working together for a year at that point on EIP 4844, scaling Ethereum. And so it was just the context where it's like we knew that we were in this together. We loved the technology. It was open source. We felt like there was team fit and kind of strength weakness fit, and we knew everyone, and it just clicked together. And it's been awesome, really awesome.
And everybody can tell it's going well.
Super team is what we say. One super team, one super dream, scaling the super chain.
We got to get the stickers on this for a T-shirt.
One of these days.
Well, both of those are, in a way, from an organizational standpoint, at opposite ends of that spectrum. You kind of have lots of people on the centralized side that kind of powers Coinbase to business and gets more people here. Optimism is pushing the boundaries of what it means to be a massive decentralized collective. How does Base fit in here? How do you kind of think about decentralization here, and kind of what does that mean to you from the context of the chain?
And you mean on the technology side, kind of like how are we just
technology or even ethos, but
yeah.
primarily technology?
Yeah. So, and I actually talked a lot about this in my talk at ECC on Wednesday. But we believe that decentralization is absolutely critical for Base, because decentralization is the key characteristic that enables us to build an open global economy. Like without decentralization, we don't get an open global on-chain economy. And so an open global on-chain economy then enables all the things that we care about. It enables stable currencies for everyone. It enables equal access for everyone, regardless of where you're born. It enables stronger property rights. So that is like why decentralization. In terms of kind of like how are we pushing forward decentralization on the technology side, it's really about decentralizing the OP stack. We're doing a bunch of things there. One of the recent kind of announcements is that we're teaming up with Paradigm on OpReth. So we're going to be adding op support for Reth and helping us get to a second fault prover with OpReth. So that's been a really cool collaboration that we're starting with Georgios and team.
You just talked about that 30 minutes ago, even better.
Yeah, there we go. We're coordinated. And then we've been doing a bunch of other things across the kind of like technology stack. We built this whole open source monitoring toolkit called Pessimism. Aptly named. That's basically just meant to detect and respond to issues or anomalies in any OP stack chain, so Base or OP Mainnet or Azure Network or Public Goods Network or any of the other ones that are coming. And I think that felt like just a place where our strengths could shine. Like we have so much experience doing security and monitoring at Coinbase. This was a really great contribution for us to make, and it's already kind of surpassed all of the other monitoring tools for OP Stack Chain. So that's another really cool one. And then another thing that we're working on right now with Optimism is we're starting to design kind of the next generation security council that will do contract upgrades in a really secure way, reduce single points of failure, decentralize that kind of process in a really substantive way, and work across not just Base, but also OP Mainnet and also other chains that want to opt into using this single security council. So that's really exciting on the technology side.
So am I to understand that? So I think you kind of, in a way, indirectly pointed out something interesting. So the 7 engineers that are there, they're not just building things internally so that you can do this thing. They're actually contributing back to the OP stack.
Yeah, we joined as the second core developer of the OP stack. So
amazing.
We're just building. That was kind of our commitment. It felt like if we were going to use the technology, we had to give back to the underlying public good infrastructure and make sure that it was sustainable and make sure that it could improve and decentralize and scale and bring our best. So that's what we're doing.
I mean, thank you. This is great.
Yeah, we're excited about
people get to then use it, and everybody is working and building and interacting with more safer code.
Exactly. I mean, like we just right before we opened up Base for Mainnet for builders. So if you're a builder, you can go and deploy on Base Mainnet as of last Thursday. Mainnet for everyone's coming in a couple weeks. But before that, we went through a whole checklist of things we had to kind of check off before we felt comfortable launching. And one of them was, a whole suite of audits. We did internal audits, we did external audits with kind of a whole code contest. And the really cool thing about that was those were like just extra. like the OP
And nice
Labs.
to have.
Yeah, they're nice to have. Like the OP Labs team had already run multiple dedicated audits. They'd already run multiple internal audits. They'd already run multiple code contests. And we were kind of coming in and saying, okay, let's just get more eyes, more eyes. And I think other teams that are building on the OP stack are doing the same thing, where it's like more eyes, more eyes. And in general, I think that's how we get to confidence in the layer 2 technology stack. It's like the more of us working on shared standards that are open source, that are publicly available, that are freely available, like Ethereum has kind of paved the way with their clients. I think the safer, more secure platforms.
Battle testing, you can never do too much of it.
Exactly.
So one of the super interesting things that when I took away when the announcement came out of Base as a project was Coinbase effectively has 100 million plus users, and one thing we haven't seen really well in the spaces yet, we haven't seen distributions from people who are starting crypto projects or protocols first and then trying to go to users. You have the opposite problem, or the direction is opposite. It's not a problem yet. What's kind of the plan to introduce the 100 million people to Base, and kind of how do you see that rollout?
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is the big opportunity that we have. It's like, how do we connect up the bottom of the stack to the top of the stack and make it work really, really well? And how do we make it incredibly easy both for developers to build applications on chain, but then also for users to use them? And obviously, Base is an open ecosystem. It's decentralizing. We're working with all sorts of wallets. Rainbow and MetaMask and Trust and Coinbase Wallet and Coinbase and Frame and a bunch of others. But I do think there's something really powerful about getting to just sit next to people building wallets and build a chain with them. And so, like, a recent example of this is as we're working on Mainnet and we're working on a bunch of kind of like what comes directly after Mainnet. How do we get people on chain? I see some people in the audience here who've been collaborating with us on that. One of the things we saw was like, okay, if you're an everyday person and you're walking down the street and you see kind of like a wild posting or like a wheat paste, those like cool signs in New York, and there's a QR code and it says like, okay, something cool, you scan it and you want to do that thing. We were working through those flows, and when you scanned it in Coinbase Wallet and you tried to do the thing, there was 12 steps before you did the thing. You had to like back up your seed, you had to set a password, you had to like set a username thing, you had to accept Face ID. And so just in the last month, we made it so instead of having 12 steps, there's 0 steps. Now you just scan the thing, the app opens and Face IDs you, and you have a wallet configured. And then over time, in the background, we'll get you to set up a PIN. We'll get you to back it up if you need to, if you overcome a certain balance. So I think like that kind of product work, where it's just like, how do we go from, as a user, I want to do a thing, I have 12, 20, 50 steps that are confusing, that take minutes, hours, to I am a user, I want to do a thing, and that thing just works. I don't have to make a complex chain decision. I think that's my primary focus right now.
And not to mention stuff around bridging assets if you're on different chains for a lot of these things. 100%. So, okay, that's really good to hear. You already said the developer mainnet access kind of went out 2 weeks ago. Mainnet very soon.
Very soon.
What are you worried about?
What am I worried about? I think it's always a little scary. I mean, always a little scary. I don't know. This is the first time I've ever launched a network. I have no idea. No,
from your real name.
The way I feel is kind of like the day before, the hours before you're throwing a party, or like a conference or like anything, where it's like you have all the RSVPs. Like, we know the people are coming, but like, are they really gonna come? Like, that's what keeps me up at night. It's like all of the final, just like crossing the T's, dotting the I's, making sure that we're doing everything we can to make the day one experience and the week one experience and the month one experience really great for folks. And we're gonna try our best. We got a lot of fun things cooking, but the thing that I also kind of tell myself when I'm lying awake in bed is it's not it's not about the first week. It's not about the first month. This is going to be a year's journey. And this summer, Onchain summer, is the beginning of that journey. And it's a moment where I think we're going to start turning the tide and start growing the pie in a really material way. But ultimately, it's going to be years of hard work from the Base team, from the Coinbase team, from all the people in this audience to bring a million developers and 1 billion users and then 8 billion users on chain. And I think it'll be done by the end of the decade. And I'm an optimistic. I loved Eli when you asked him. I was like, what would I say to that question? And literally verbatim, I would have said the same thing. First thing, it's like I'm pretty right on the things that are going to happen, but I'm usually way too optimistic about the timeline on which they're going to happen.
So maybe let's force some measurable predictions. 2 years from now, what does that look like for Base or the overall L2 ecosystem from your perspective?
Yeah, I think that 2 years from now, so 2 years from now is like middle of 2025. I think that we'll be past 100 million people who are on chain. And I think we'll be like working our way towards 1 billion people who are on chain. I think one of the things that makes that feel a little more aggressive than I think it actually might be is that kind of our industry is we're a little bit traumatized by a decade of kind of flat growth, right? We've had like flat usage of crypto with some spikes because of price. But if you look at traditional kind of consumer product adoption curves, that's not really how it works. Right.
Consistent week over week, month over month.
Consistent week over week, month over month growth, right? Like that's how TikTok went from a small thing to billions of people. That's how OpenAI and ChatGPT went from.
Coinbase got 100 million users.
That's how Coinbase got it. Well, kind of. I mean, Coinbase.
It was more correlated with the spikes, I see.
Yeah. But I think that at a certain point, it's going to change, right? And on-chain and the platform that exists here is going to start doing consistent week over week, month over month, 10 to 20% growth. And it will not stop until literally the entire world is on-chain. And I think that moment has probably started like literally just in the last 6 months or the last 3 months. When I look at the way I'm transacting and interacting on chain, when I look at the applications that are starting to be released on chain, I feel like we've hit that inflection point, and now it's just going to be the growth phase. And so maybe I'm off by 6 months, I'm not sure, but at some point, definitely before the next 2 years, we're going to stop being in this when will it happen phase that we've been in for whatever 13 years, 14 years, and we will start being in the whoa, it's growing. And I was talking to someone on the optimism team, because we were running around conferences. I'm like in Paris trying to meet everyone, but then also trying to keep our mainnet launch on track. I feel like my brain is literally melting. And what I said to her was, it's freaking crazy right now, but we're not even really growing, right? Like if you look at the growth rate of the last few years, like we're retaining, but it's flat. Real growth, like the 3 months, 4 months, 6 months of Coinbase from April 2017 to the end of 2017, we grew 100x in 6 months. That is just like brain shattering. And so I think that at some point in the next 2 years, we're just going to hit that, and it's going to not stop until we get to 8 billion people. And that might take a few years, but it's going to be like one of the craziest roller coasters I think all of us get to go on together.
That's a perfect note to end on. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks y'all for having me.
All right, well, this was the end of our first half of today. So please enjoy the next 10 or 15 minutes of break, and then we'll start serving lunch downstairs. Thanks, everybody.